Hello, everyone. Welcome to Scholars Hub at Home. I'm Allison Gampel, Associate Director of Alumni Programs at York University. Thank you for joining us for today's lecture, Collaboration and the Art of Co-Creating Through Uncertainty, 1-9. I'll begin with our land acknowledgement. Since we're not all gathered in the same space, I recognize that I might acknowledge the territory that you're currently on. If this is the case, please take the responsibility to acknowledge the traditional territory you're on and the current treaty holders. The website nativeland.ca is a good resource for this. As a member of the York University community, I recognize that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territories upon which York University campuses are located that precede the establishment of York University. York University acknowledges its presence on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Tekaronto has been caretaken by the Anishinaabeg Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. Before we begin with today's topic, I want to be sure that you know of an exciting event happening later this month. You've likely heard of the Bryden Alumni Awards, one of our flagship events. Well, last year in 2020, we paused the ceremony to reflect on 20 years of incredible success and tradition established by the awards. And this year, we are really pleased to present a reimagined 2021 York U Alumni Awards. We will be honoring 4 amazing alumni on November 18th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And we have a fantastic lineup of talent, including 4-time Juno nominee and our current York student, Sarah Sleen, and an amazing alumna, Hudu Hershey, who was selected as the new face of Canada at the Just for Laughs Festival in Montreal. I will join President Lenton on the virtual stage, and there will be an opportunity for networking immediately after the show. I'm really excited for this, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Tickets to this are complimentary, but registration is required. To learn more, visit the website that should pop up right now on our Alumni and Friends website. Now, before we begin, we're going to ask 2 poll questions, and they should pop up on your screen really soon. So the first should pop up. The question is, have you ever made a film? So take a moment or two to let us know if you've ever made a film. Thank you. Cool. Okay. We can see that many of you have. Okay, and we have a second poll. How do you relate to the unknown? So do you love it? Do you hate it, or does it depend? Let us know what you think. Thank you. A big it depends. But no one hates it. Wow, that's fantastic. Okay, so thanks everyone for participating. In the way of tech support, if you need any help at all with the Zoom webinar, please feel free to click on the Q&A button that's at the bottom of your screen and enter your question. We've got a team that's ready to help you. And that same button can be used to submit questions for our guest speakers during the Q&A period that will follow the chat that they're going to share with us. Please do note that all of your questions and comments are visible to our panelists and staff who are working behind the scenes, so please keep them relevant and respectful. On to today's talk. We are featuring Ingrid Veninger, who got her MFA in 2019 from York. Ingrid is an assistant professor in the School of Arts, Media, Performance, and Design, and we're also featuring filmmaker Lydia Zimmerman. Let me tell you a little bit about each. Starting with Ingrid. Ingrid was born in Bratislava and raised in Canada. Ingrid has produced 15 feature films. With retrospectives of her work in Ottawa and in Santiago, Chile at FemCine, she has been the recipient of numerous awards, including the WIF's International Visionary Award, the Alliance of Women Film Journalists EDA Award for Best Director, and the J. Scott Prize presented by the Toronto Film Critics Association. Ingrid is a member of the Directors Guild of Canada and participant in the inaugural TIFF Studio, Berlindale Talents, and Rotterdam Producers Lab. She has been a mentor at the Canadian Film Centre and screenwriter in residence at the University of Toronto. An advocate for gender parity, in 2014, Ingrid launched the Punk Films Femmes Lab, sponsored by Academy Award winner Melissa Leo. Currently, Ingrid is in the development on 3 feature film projects supported by Telefilm Canada. We also welcome filmmaker Lydia Zimmerman, who has written and directed films since 1994. Lydia currently lives between Barcelona and Zurich, developing film projects with Artisan Films in Switzerland, Principal Films in Spain, and Ralda Worldwide in Catalonia. From 2011 to 2013, she lived and worked in Haiti, helping start Cine Institute, the first film school in the country. During this period, she combined her pedagogical activity with the production of a filmic essay, Stand-In, an experimental deconstruction of the cinematic language. Lydia holds a master in transdisciplinary arts from the Zurich University of the Arts, where she did research on nonlinear narratives. We are so pleased that both of you are here today. Welcome, Ingrid and Lydia.
Thank you.
I turn it over to you both, and I will be back for the Q&A session.
Hey, Lydia. I've been so looking forward to this. So I thought what we do first is I would show a trailer to give you a little bit of a sense of what we made. And then I will have 8 slides, a short PowerPoint, just to give a bit of background. And then Lydia and I will have a conversation to, I think, deconstruct the process a little bit. So first to the trailer. Here we go. I'm going to share my screen. And I'll make this full screen. Here we go. All right. And I will stop sharing. Woo, it feels so intense to watch that again. And truth is the process was quite intense. So how did it start? I will, here we go. Can you see how we collaborate? The PowerPoint there? Great. Okay, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. So on March 20th, 2020, I sent a Facebook message to Lydia, a filmmaker in Barcelona, asking if she would be part of an international filmmaking experiment. My message was out of the blue. We'd only met once and it had been 20 years since we spoke. This was my initial pitch. March 2020 involved upheaval and uncertainty. At York U, our classes suddenly moved online, lives were turned upside down, and there was fear. Co-creating a film was not at the top of mind for everyone, understandably. So when I reached out with this PowerPoint, an invitation to be part of an international collaboration, co-creating in this time of COVID, my idea was to have 10 women filmmakers from around the world linked through isolation. Have images here, An Exquisite Corpse, An Inland Empire by David Lynch, and the pitch continued. My immediate reflex was to collaborate, to make a film with other women, to get an insight into their points of view, their perspectives, the gaze on what was happening right now, to make something very personal, very primal, very immediate. So there's some quotes here. Maybe it's hard to read. The first one is by Mira Nair, second one by Agnes Varda, and third one by Miranda July. So the idea was to make a kind of anthology series, or a kind of 10 tracks to an album, or 10 chapters to a novel, where these 10 individual films would join to make one feature film. And there would be potential links, thematic links, objects, gestures, transitions. And we thought we would speak about these in more depth, in more detail, once the filmmakers were confirmed. So between March 20th and March 30th, I reached out to over 40 filmmakers worldwide. The idea of The Exquisite Corpse at the very beginning was a source of inspiration for us. It was hatched in 1925 by the Surrealists, and participants play by taking turns drawing sections of a body on a sheet of paper, folded to hide each individual contribution. The first player adds a head, then, without knowing what that head looks like, the next artist adds a torso, and so on. Surrealist poet Simone Kahn, an early adopter of the game, remembered in a 1975 essay, "We were at once recipients of and contributors to the joy of witnessing the sudden appearance of creatures none of us had foreseen, but which we ourselves had nonetheless created." So that was very much an inspiration for us. And we had a kind of schedule map to outline the time commitment. March 20th to 30th, the filmmakers were to be confirmed, 10 of them. April to May, we were going to create, write, imagine, and plan. We were going to shoot our pieces. In June, July, complete our rough cuts. In August, discover the shape of the final film. Much like An Exquisite Corpse, it was going to unfold before us. None of us knew what the others were making, so it was to be a surprise. In December, we were going to finish the film entirely with the final editing, the sound design, the mix, the color grade. And in January 2021, we would send out the link to each other and we would celebrate. We, in fact, did have our premiere at the Female Eye Film Festival in Toronto in March 2021. And we're about to have our US premiere at a film festival in Wilmington, North Carolina next week. So we also thought about kinds of parameters. Our budgets, suggested price, $0. We were going to be in isolation, so we wanted to be resourceful. Our cameras, anything we had accessible, many of us shot on iPads and phones. Stock footage was going to be allowed. The camera movement, we were to innovate. The locations where we were, our cast, friends, family, ourselves, the people in our lives in that present moment. Subjects, anything present, urgent, personal. Genre could be fiction, nonfiction, or any combination. We would not know what the other filmmakers were making. As I said, the ideas would be original, impulsive, urgent, current, vital. And we took a pledge. And the pledge was, we vow to trust ourselves, trust each other, and be courageous. These were the 9 women. Originally, we were 10, but one dropped away just before shooting. Isa, Slater, Jennifer Podemsky, myself from Ontario, Shengzi Zhu from Wuhan, China, Dorothy Wenner from Berlin, Germany, Carmen from Johannesburg, South Africa, Mina Shum from Vancouver, and Lydia from Barcelona. So this was our poster. They came in many, many different colors. We finished the film 100% remotely, and that is our 1/9. So now I get to talk with Lydia. Lydia, when I sent you that message in the very beginning of the pandemic for us, it was March 20th, 2020. And within 12 hours, you replied and said, yes, I'm in. What made you say yes? I think you're muted.
Sorry, I was just thanking you for this beautiful presentation. It's amazing that we made it, and we all made it without meeting each other. It's really a great accomplishment. So why did I say yes? I say yes for different reasons. I say yes, first of all, because of you, because it was you asking. It's true that we have seen each other just once, 20 years before, but we have sort of seen each other in the social webs, and I was sort of following you on all your endeavors as a filmmaker, filming here and there, also traveling a lot. And you had been a bit of a reference because I know how difficult it is to produce your own films and to be an independent filmmaker with a family, with work. So I was, I'm in total awe and admiration. So how could I say no to Ingrid? That was very much from the heart. There was also a second reason. I'm a very curious person. I jump almost to any new adventure. But in this case, it was not a new adventure. I was curious because I had already done Acknowledgement previously with other filmmakers. I think it was in early 2000. And I felt a bit frustrated, actually, I must say, by this experiment, because we really did, we were, I think, 20 filmmakers. I mean, there were very beautiful films in it, but the final result, what I just keep, my memory only has retained the tricks of how we were joining one film with the other. So we were very literal with this cadaver exquis proposal that, for instance, I would get from the previous filmmaker. So the order was already set, and the previous filmmaker was said, my film is finishing with a bicycle wheel. So I knew that my film had to start with a bicycle wheel, and I had to pass my last image to the next one. And this is the only thing I really remember. Like, it was just this sort of engrenage that made the film work. And having a new possibility to work with a cadaver exquis, I was very much into it. For me, I must say that it was still part of the process to decide how we were going to do this. You mentioned that before in the presentation, we spent some time deciding which was going to be this mechanism. I think we decided to take this mechanism out, which was a great decision. So I'm very happy for this. And but I still want to do this more, to work in this way more, because for me, there is still another step to explore, which is really the collectivity, to become not 9, but 1. And I think we, in this project with 1-9, we actually managed to do this with the trailer. The trailer that you've all seen shows some synchronicities that happened without knowing what the other one was doing, which I think that was extremely beautiful. And I think those were I think I had another reason, but I don't know. I think it was about, yes, I mean, there was nothing else to do, right? It was like as a filmmaker, it was the thing to do, to film and document that very exceptional moment that was the beginning of the first lockdown. Yes.
Yeah, and I think we felt as we were making it that there was already, I mean, I guess the key thing was we took out the exquisite corpse form, and we kind of stripped away the idea of imposing too many links, but we did share one word with each other. And we each shared a word that for us represented the feeling of being in this moment at this time. And my word was birth, and your word was uncertainty. And
encounter.
Oh, encounter. And there was uncertainty, and there was spirit, and there was soar, and there was rage. And so what we did was we shared these words on a Zoom together, and these words were going to be what we each took into the making of our work. So beyond that, we had nothing. There were some ideas of all of our films need to have a shot of the sky, either in the day or the night or anything in between, or each of our pieces had to have a mask somewhere. So we started to think about these objects, and then we said, no, it's too contrived. And so we wanted to be liberated from all of that. And we just had the words. And so lifting off the words, I want to ask you another question about your piece specifically. In the trailer, we saw a number of moments from your piece. You're sitting on this stone bench and you're screaming with your hands up, and you have the dandelion turning and you have the ants in the tree. So can you speak a little bit about the inspiration, the genesis, the first images that you had for your chapter?
Yes. Well, my first idea was something totally different. I really wanted to work with the people I had around and the neighbors. I was isolating in this very tiny valley where there was only 5 houses around in the neighborhood. But I realized that nobody was willing to do that, or not enough people, because there was some strange mistrust coming with the pandemic. And so I sort of felt that the film had to go, it was not a film to go outside, but it was going to be a very much of an intimate film, and a bit of a portrait of how I feel in this place at this moment. And so I very much worked with footage that I went out into the valley, filmed the trees, filmed the animals. I found a snake that was very symbolic for me, to find that snake as a transformational animal. And basically my film is about a thing that sort of a thought that I kept, it came daily during this time. It's like, yes, we have a human pandemic, but we are, there is a pandemic in animals have been striving for generations. We're losing species of animals. We're losing species all over in nature. We're so anthropocentric. We're so self-centered as humans that we forget that we are part of a much bigger ecosystem. We live with other beings that are also alive and that are also sick and they're also dying. So I wanted to put that in the film. I must say that for me, the pandemic and some of the reactions, I was a bit struck by some of the reactions of people, because for me it was a great moment of hope, of transformation, and I saw a lot of fear and a lot of this self-centeredness that, so that's, my piece is about that.
I'm curious, like in terms of fear and also in combination with this word trust, we spoke about trusting each other and trusting ourselves and respecting one another, even though we'd never worked together. We didn't ever many of us never met in person. And certainly we didn't meet in person through the making of it. You and I had met in person once, but we really just kind of said yes to something without really knowing what we were saying yes to. And we agreed that there would be an ongoing consent, that every decision had to be made unanimously, from the sequencing of the chapters to the spaces in between. Would we put our words on the black cards in between, or would we just leave it as a breath of silence? Would the soundtracks merge, or did they have to be separate? How many frames between each of us? We were talking about 2 frames, 3 frames, 5 frames. So this idea of responsibility and accountability we had to each other, also to finish our films on a certain time, to deliver our rough cuts. We were all we really did feel this sense of responsibility to one another. Was there a point where you doubted and where you thought, oh, this is not worth it, I don't want to continue with this? And in the end, was it what you thought it would be, or did you have any expectations at all?
I did not doubt that we were going to make the deadlines, having you, on board and leading the team. Not at all. No. And I had no expectations, really. I think that was part of the why I said yes and why I like the project. for me, it was very much, you've said already, but the key word was trust. And I think trust is what you need when you don't know, when you're blinded or you don't know in this uncertainty. The thing that it has to come along, it's like day and night, they come together, it's trust. If not, you don't survive with uncertainty. You just die of fear, of insecurity. It's suffocating. So trust is an extremely important element, and it was all along the process. I want to just say two things, and I've also wanted to ask you something, Ingrid. This thing of not knowing, I've realized that there is a sort of a school or a style of filmmaking in which the directors don't give the full information to the actors, or the actors, for instance, now it's happening in series, the actors playing one character don't know what the end is going to be, or don't know what the other character is going to do. And that gives, this fact that they don't know, gives a lot of truth to their performances, their way of working, So it's also, there is some truth in the trust they portray. I think this is a very important element in creation, to know how to be in this not knowing. And I think that you know that very much. And my question to you is, which are the elements of trust? I mean, which are the ingredients in your experience as a creator of what makes trust? Where do you feed your trust? Or how do you feed your trust? Like in this process we did together.
Yeah, I mean, it's a constant practice for me. I think that I turn to filmmaking and I think every few years I crave this kind of an experiment where filmmakers are put in the center of unknowing and kind of even unraveling what we know by doing these co-creations. Of course, filmmaking is very collaborative, but when you're genuinely co-creating and you're not in this hierarchical system of, one visionary, but we were 9 visionaries. We were all filmmakers with deep practices and very, very different aesthetics and very different experiences, and also different scales of experience, from emerging to veteran, from 20 to 65, in different places of the world, in different times of our lives. So curiosity was key for me. Curiosity is a key part of trust. And, John Cassavetes, cited as the godfather of American independent cinema or whatever, says, to make a film, you can't be afraid of anything or anybody. And I generally understand that, but I think that it's through being afraid and with a lot of doubt and holding uncertainty that I sort of am propelled into making something with an extreme sense of vulnerability. And it's sitting in that vulnerability and not running away from it that creates the meaning for me, and creates the growth and creates the challenge. And then I get a little bit more confident, and then I want to throw myself into another scale of uncertainty with each one. It's what drives me a little bit. But every few years after I do it, I think I cannot do this again. And then I make my independent films where I'm the director. And then every 6 years or so, I think I have to do that again, because it's a different kind of challenge, a different kind of muscle.
I think there is also this feeling, I don't know if it happens to you, that every time you start a new project, a new film, you're not sure if you're going to be able to do it. Like, it's not something that because you did it before or because your previous experience, but in my case, I always feel that it's new. There is something new each time. And in this case, definitively, it was so.
Yeah, and I lean on, some of those quotes, like by Agnes Varda, saying, all you need in life is a computer, a camera, and a cat. And I think, okay, well, if Varda says that, to strip everything away and say, well, okay, I have my family in my house, So I was isolating with my daughter and her 1-year-old baby girl who was about to, have this first birthday. And my daughter had envisioned this big celebration with family, and it was just us. And the loneliness and the feeling of not having anyone to share this moment with, and the partner being elsewhere and no family being around. And just, I think that the parents, the single parents with infants and new children and being in playgrounds was out. I think, it was now the granddaughter is turning 2.5 almost. And for the last 1.5 years of her life, she has never engaged with another child in a sandbox or in a playground. She's never had a play date. She's never, so it's such a different kind of experience that my daughter was going through, and to capture that moment in time was what birth was about, and it was kind of funny because you see the little baby's legs going into the bathtub, and here my daughter is saying, I think the temperature is too hot. And me as the director going, no, I think it's fine. Let's shoot. So we had like the mother, the daughter, the granddaughter, these 3 generations of women kind of navigating the temperature of the water.
This is, your film is extremely touching because it really documents a moment that it will be, the fact that it's documented for the rest of her life, that she's going to be, a woman our age, and being able to see that moment, this first birthday of life in such an amazing circumstance and so unusual. This is an extremely valuable document and very beautiful film. Yes, very touching.
I think there was something else that when you asked the question, it made me think about how I don't think I could have made a film in my traditional way as like a sole writer, director, producer in this last 1.5 years. I needed, and I don't know if you feel this way, but it was our making a pledge to each other that enabled me to be creative. There's no way I could have done it by myself.
Yeah.
I needed other women, and it was that meant everything. So it would have been devastating if nobody said yes. In that 10-day window, when I was so fixated on 10 women from different parts of the world collaborating, you saying yes created the possibility. If no one said yes, there would be no 1-9.
Yeah.
So thank you
Of
for
course,
saying yes.
Yeah. There was no doubt. And just to repeat one of the lines, the quotes you chose, I love the one, do not wait to be sure. And I would even say just do not wait, that's the moment of doing the things. I'm very grateful that you invited me to that.
Speaking of do not wait, I'm jumping into this conversation because I want to invite the members of our audience, our participants, to have an opportunity to ask their questions and share their thoughts. So for members of our audience, if you have a question that you'd like to ask, I'll ask it on your behalf. Just type it into the Q&A section at the Q&A button, or if you're on Facebook watching, feel free to type it in there. It'll get passed on to me and I'll ask it on your behalf. I do want to share the first comment that came in just after the trailer was shown, which was from Shabnam, thank you, who just said, wow, I want to see all of it. And I think that both the trailer and the conversation that you had has left those of us who haven't seen all of it just really thinking, yes, I'd like to see all of it.
Well, that's great. I mean, it's so tricky in this time, festivals they were online, and that now they're sort of hybrid. We are having this US premiere next weekend. And then if you are interested in seeing the film, maybe Allison, you can collect emails. And I think that maybe by the end of the year or sooner, we could find a platform to put it online, and certainly keep you posted on where and when to watch the whole feature.
Sure, we can absolutely do that. So we'll send a follow-up email to everyone who's here and gather that information for folks who are interesting. Someone who asked, how about a screening at Nat Taylor?
That's an interesting idea. Yeah, that could be possible. Maybe in the new term, maybe January, February. Lydia, would you come to Toronto for a Q&A at the
I'd love
campus?
to. Yes, yes.
Okay, seed
I
planted.
cannot say
Thank
no
you.
to Ingrid. That's
Seed planted. Okay, so I want to ask a question. So I mean, March 20th, 2020, right? That was like a week into the start of the pandemic. I was literally like falling apart and trying to figure out how to get myself out of bed. And yet you, Ingrid, were conceptualizing this idea and already in the process of making something happen, right? How did you do it? How did you go from, from being a basket case to birthing this amazing idea?
It was a fire. It was fierce. It was, this has to be, and it has to be now. And understandably, when I was reaching out to those, first filmmakers, and again, I went immediately around the world. Lydia said yes, but she was one of the first. The other four, maybe in those first five, were, can I just have a week to think about this? And it's completely understandable. It's March 20th. And I went, I actually need to know the answer by midnight. And the reason was that every filmmaker who said yes created a domino, because there was an intuitive balance, not only in place and in age and experience, but in sensibility. I was kind of trying to create this single organism, right? And how was this single organism going to sort of function? And that was very intuitive, because I knew most of the work by these women, but I'd never met them. I'd never collaborated with them. I didn't really know. So it was on a kind of hunch that I just had to trust. And it was a very short turnaround to commit. And so some filmmakers, I mean, a week after, in the beginning of April, said, I would have loved to be part of this, but I just couldn't say yes immediately. And I went, we had to go, we had to move.
Yeah, I was coming back from Colombia. Actually, I had to come back on the 16th March because I was shooting there with some indigenous communities. So I had all my camera gear and everything. And I was flying from Bogota, stopover in Barcelona and returning to Zurich. And I said, no, I'm staying here. What am I going to do in Zurich? I've got all my gear, and it was a perfect timing on my side.
It is like that for me. It's like a fever. It's not a voluntary thing. And when it strikes, it can't be suppressed. I mean, you wait for that as a writer, as a filmmaker, you wait for that moment. And I've learned to recognize that when it comes, I have to take it all the way. And even with every no, it was like, okay, so that's a no. So then it opens up this opportunity to these potential filmmakers, and that's a no. And the last two filmmakers, I mean, I had this site on March 30th, 10 filmmakers, and the last two filmmakers committed at midnight on March 30th. That was it. And we had our 10. And then when one of them had to pull away, it was because life just became so overwhelming and so intense. And they very rightfully said, I just can't, I don't want to let the others down. I can't meet these deadlines. I'm going to pull out. And then interestingly, it was so right that it was 9 of us. Mm-hmm. And, in COVID-19 and it being 9 filmmakers joining to make one film. So that's how 1-9 came to be. That ended up being so right in the end.
Wonderful. I was actually going to ask that question. You beat me to it. I want to ask about women, right? Women. I know gender parity, I read in your bio that's a piece of the work that you do. Talk about why you did this with women and the role women play.
I mean, I think it's a bit of in the bigger sense, with the Punk Films FemLab, that was also 6 women, Canadian storytellers. And that sort of mission was, so many of us make our first feature films, and then it's like years before we make our second. What's up with that? So it was really filmmakers that were coming to their second, third, and fourth features to kind of band together and write new material in a very concentrated period of time, 6 months, 6 filmmakers, 6 feature film screenplays, championed by Melissa Leo, who was going to have a first look at these 6 scripts. And we were, again, it was sort of a supportive group. And this kind of circle where we were accountable to one another. And so I think it comes from absolutely being curious about a very specific point of view, a very specific gaze in context of this pandemic, but also as a tipping of the scales, in the advocacy that I do for gender parity, it's like, okay, we have a lot of this kind of perspective. We need a bit more of this kind of perspective. And especially in this isolation, it was, how are women navigating? What will that look like? What will that feel like? I want to know.
Fantastic. So a question coming in from Rose in our audience is, what were the challenges, if any, that you faced because everyone was all over the world instead of physically together?
Well, Lydia can speak to that. I mean, time zones, setting up Zooms. We only had 2 Zooms together through the entire process. The email threads, again, I would send something at night and it would be received in the morning. Other than that, other than trying to get us all on a Zoom at the same time, given what everybody was doing and where everybody was, both personally and professionally and geographically and emotionally, it was really beautiful otherwise to get these different perspectives on what was happening. And I thought, I can't imagine it being any other way. It was so enriching. Ultimately, it was just the hiccup of the technical and the going through post-production and the decision making being unanimous. I mean, we did ultimately sign an agreement where we just decided that everything would be made unanimously. And if we couldn't come to an agreement on any aspect of the film, we would have to meet on a Zoom and talk it out and hear each other's perspectives. So the international was essential. How did you feel, Lydia? Were there obstacles?
Yeah, I mean, obstacles, no, but I mean, it was a challenge to be so free to do whatever I wanted. It was extremely challenging that. So, I mean, I spent maybe, yeah, most of the time, you know, writing and writing ideas and yeah, but I'm filming here and there. I have a lot of footage that is not in the film, but that was a bit of a challenge to sort of narrow it down to one narrative, one story. I think it was also very important in the post-production. You brought in an amazing team doing the post-production, and that was very refreshing and very important. I think it was very key to have somebody that was not this 9 that we had been all so much within, you know, in the pressure and in the adventure of creating those stories. Somebody from the outside that came to watch and also helped very much in the order of the films. I think that was a great thing. That was a very important contribution also.
That's true. That's absolutely key. We all cut our individual pieces and we delivered the rough cuts, then ultimately the fine cuts and the picture lock. But we had a supervising editor, Rick Bartram, who was really, again, we were all shooting on different formats. We were all different. We were all shooting in different, we decided on the ratio, but we were different PAL and 24 frames per second and 30 frames per second and various different things needed to be consolidated. So that cohesiveness on a technical level was incredibly nitty-gritty. So that supervising editor, we had a sound designer that again was creating cohesion in the soundscape. Some of our pieces had scores, had music, of course, dialogue, sound effects, ambience tracks. So again, organizing all of those tracks, image-wise, sound-wise, and then color-wise. So again, all of us had our individual ideas for our pieces and what the color grading would be like. But then there was a colorist that was kind of creating a cohesion. So all these like levels of artistry, and that overview, as you just spoke about, Lydia, and that came through Deluxe in Toronto. And again, everything was on remote, and we were putting links out to everybody so we could all see and be part of the process. That was so valuable. And with your piece, you had voiceover, right, Lydia? And I wonder, did you ever think of that being, do you always think of that being in English, or did you at some point think of it being subtitled? And I know at some point it was the voiceover of a bird, and because voiceover was yet another part of the soundscape. Can you talk about the voiceover a little bit?
Yes, actually, it was first like I had a bit of a doubt, and we spoke about that. We had different points of views. It was a very interesting talk about first persona or third persona, no? Like, is it the I that talks, or is it a third person that you don't really know in the film who it is. And finally, I decided to go for the third person because also that I felt it was corresponding more with the central idea of the film of, you know, taking the voice out from the human and putting it into another living form. You don't know if it's the trees or the bird talking, but yeah, the idea was the bird, but actually not the person, not the woman isolating. So there is this voice that talks about this experience of this woman that is in this, surrounded by a very sick forest where the trees are dying too. So the pandemic in my film is actually the trees, it's nature. And that was a very interesting moment of co-creation and deciding, you know, how this voice was going to be. Yeah, that was the question, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I could feel Allison saying, I think we're at time.
We are at time, but I want to ask two questions. And one question is coming in. Can we stay on for another few minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So one question is more of a tactical one coming in from Shabnam. I want to ask, it was about budget. And I know initially there was something about zero budget, but Shabnam asks, how did you fund it, especially the post work?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately I was able to, there was a COVID-19 research grant call that came through York University, and I was lucky enough to be a recipient of that grant. And so ultimately I was able to pay each filmmaker a little bit of money, and some money went to these supervisory sort of creative people in post-production. And ultimately, I think the total was $10,000. And that's, you know, maybe $15,000. So that's $1,000 going to each filmmaker, and then some money going to the other folks. So the production didn't cost, the grant came in, everyone was able to get a little bit of something, and then that felt really good to send checks out.
Great. Okay. So I have two final thoughts before we unfortunately say goodbye, because I feel like we could keep talking forever. And I can only imagine how hard it must have been to condense these stories into 10 minutes. So I do want to know, you know, you talked about every few years you crave your next experiment. So I'd love to know for each of you, if you know yet, what's next, and if you're ready to share that. And if there's any thoughts you want to leave our audience with.
Lydia, you go first.
Okay, so it's two, right? So what are we doing now? And last thought. Okay, I have spent last year writing a TV series. So now I'm sort of in this process of waiting, you know, for the funding to come through. And I started writing a feature film. There is going to be a very also independent, low budget film of 3 characters, but it's going to be set in the 17th century. Yes, so I think I'm going to be, yeah, this year and next year is going to be writing most of it and getting the finance for that. I'm also doing artistic projects here in Zurich, but this is like my other side. A last thought for the audience. I think there is very few people that have done films, right? Was it right? Very
Yeah, I think it was only 10%. So
yeah,
90% of us are aspiring, perhaps.
Yeah. So yes, I had once like the thought that maybe that, you know, for people that are not used to create, or that their work doesn't evolve around creativity or creation, that to create is like, yeah, and it was very much the experience with my film, you know, because I had so many ideas, it's not doing something out of nothing. We have this idea that when you create, it comes out of the blue and it, boom, it's there, no? I think there is different processes actually to take out the things, you know, to leave out the frame, because we are so filled with inputs and ideas, consciously and unconsciously, that I think to create is to know how to sort out and what to leave out, you know, and at the end of the process, what you get is your creation. I think this is something yes, I mean, I could be talking a lot about that, but in that case, I think it was very, very important and confirm that theory of mine that to create is actually to sort out in order to, and when Ingrid talks about her vision that it came like fire, I think you're very lucky when that happens. You know, I also had a few moments in my life when this thing like was like bing, eureka. And I think this is also happening because you're constantly working on that, you know, on this is a muscle that actually, yeah, like there's people that run every morning, there is people that were just writing every day or creating images. And then there is one day in which you sort out the ones that don't go, and then the one that has to be comes into life. And I think 1-9 has so many of those elements that had to be, you know, the way Ingrid has so well explained. Thank you.
I love that. And I guess maybe I'll just quickly say that a beautiful thing that was generated out of this experience was a new course at York University. I'm a faculty member in Cinema and Media Arts. It's part of AMPD, School of Arts, Media, Performance and Design. And we had this course called Shooting the Set, which was to happen with our partner space. We have 2 amazing sound stages at CineSpace. And that was to happen 2020, fall, pandemic. And I thought, well, I'm in the process of making this international feature film through isolation. We can move the set into our homes, our basements, our living rooms, our backyards. And these 20 students from across, it's a pan-faculty course, so from across AMPD in design, in music, in theater, in, of course, cinema, in media arts, could come together, and we could make a feature film just with the cameras we have accessible without knowing necessarily what each other are doing, and maybe groups of 4 and kind of team projects. And this amazing feature film, 85-minute feature film, was born out of this class. So it's Shooting the Set, the Isolation Edition. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to do that again in the winter term with students from across AMPD. So that's a pretty amazing thing that came out of making this project.
Ingrid, you should call it not course, but corpse. In honor to collaborate, the corpse exquis.
I love that. I love that. Well, listen, Ingrid, Lydia, thank you so much for the work that you do. Ingrid, for the work that you do with our students, and for being here today and dialoguing with one another and with our audience and sharing what this experience was like. I have no doubt that everyone that spent this past 52 minutes with us, because we just couldn't end at 45 minutes, is super eager to see the film. So we'll talk logistics at another time. So I wish you well. Thank you, and invite you to turn off your cameras, and I'll just close out the event.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Okay, so for our audience, thank you for being here. Today's session will be posted to our YouTube page at youtube.com/YorkU Alumni if you'd like to share it with friends or family. And you can also watch any past lectures or Scholars Hubs that you may have missed. Before we say goodbye, we have one last poll question for you. So it's going to pop up on your screen right now. Just check that it's popping up. Is the poll question popping up? I don't see it. Okay. So the question was, did you resonate with the topic? So yes, no, or somewhat. If you could just take a moment and let us know how you felt with regards to the topic. Oh my gosh, 100% resonated. And I didn't get to fill out the poll, but I totally agree. So thank you all for being here and for staying on. As we close out 2021, we do have a full calendar of events lined up over the next 5 weeks. So tomorrow on November 4th, we launch a brand new event series that's called Mid-Career Conversations, which are alumni-led conversations and networking. And the first one is about becoming an author. So today we talked about making film. Maybe you've always dreamed of writing a book or something like that. Feel free to join us. It's tomorrow night. On November 18th, we have, as I mentioned earlier, the York U Alumni Awards show, and we hope to see you there. On November 24th, we have another Scholars Hub with Janet Mosher, who's Associate Professor at Osgoode Hall Law School, and her session is titled Intimate Partner Violence and Access to Justice. On November 25th, we have our gratitude session, which is a networking event for young alumni. On Saturday, November 27th, the York Circle will feature a panel presentation titled Francophone in Canada, Negotiating Minority and Majority Rights. And finally, on December 8th, in partnership with Glendon College, we present a Scholars Hub with Allison Harvey, Assistant Professor of in the Communications Program at Glendon. That's called Video Gaming for Good, Play in the Pandemic. Feel free to register for any of these events at yorku.ca/alumni and friends. We're always interested in hearing from you about the topics you're interested in hearing about. Suggestions and feedback are always welcome, and you can reach out to us on our social media channels. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram, or via email at alumni@yorku.ca. Thank you all for being here, and take care.